It was a champion's drive from Lando Norris in Brazil as he extends his lead in the championship over teammate and title rival Oscar Piastri, who made yet another mistake. And Ben's bet all season long did not pay out after a disastrous weekend for Ferrari. We'll discuss all that and more as we review the São Paulo Grand Prix in this episode of Inside the Piranha Club. I'm Rebecca Clancy.
I'm Ben Hunt, and I take no responsibility at all for anyone that lumped on Lewis Hamilton to win in Brazil. It was all, optimism, blind optimism. That's all it was. But we'll get on to that, won't we?
We will. Let's start with Lando Norris because it was an utterly brilliant weekend from him. Not even just on Sunday, on Saturday as well. He won the sprint race. He was pretty near perfect the whole weekend. He is now 24 points ahead of Piastri with just 3 race weekends to go. That does include a sprint race in Qatar, which means there are 83 points still available. It's looking pretty good for Norris. As I said, Piastri made that mistake, caused a collision, although we'll come on to that. I think it was a bit harsh that he was the only one held accountable. But Norris, 58-point swing since Zandvoort. And what I think sets him apart this weekend is that the main race on Sunday, he beat Max Verstappen when Max Verstappen was pretty much at his best as well.
Yeah, we should caveat that by saying that Max started pretty near the back, didn't he? 17th
in the
or whatever
pit lane.
it was.
It was
right,
a superb drive from Max Verstappen. We will come to that. But Norris was just utterly perfect at exactly the time he needed to be.
Well, yes. And I think that was the thing. That was a titanic drive from Verstappen, but Norris did what he needed to do out in front, and he wasn't unsettled. And I think, crossing the line, 10 seconds ahead of Antonelli, further 10 seconds ahead of Verstappen is a commanding result. A track where, he has struggled in the past. It's not always been pretty easy for him. I was really interested to see just how he would cope with that pressure, having dominated the weekend, whether he'd switched off or not. But no, he was on it, as you say. And I think that, he's underlined those credentials. And it goes back to what we were talking about, a few podcasts ago, about him changing mentality and also coming into this year with the focus of, I know what it takes to win a championship. And maybe that is not panicking. You mentioned Zandvoort, and of course, at that stage, it looked unlikely, but he didn't panic, and he's managed to grind out the results. So he's in pole position to take this championship win, and I think ultimately you've got to say he does deserve it for the way that he's played the long game. He hasn't got flustered, he hasn't lost his cool so much this season as he may have done last year. So yeah, great drive, all round great performance.
Terrible first half of the season, though, and I think even he would admit that. He's really pulled it around. You spoke to it, Ben, about the summer break. He went away. He's changed his approach to the weekend.
Yeah.
He was asked the obvious question last night of whether or not he's thinking about the championship, and he said, no, not at all. Absolutely no one believes him, but what else do you expect him to say?
Yeah, what a fibber, I was going to say.
But he was also saying that he wasn't particularly happy with the weekend because... And I think this is also where the champion's mind comes in, because he was saying, I'm probably going to go and see the team. I'll congratulate them, but I'll also see where we weren't quick enough. And that's in reference to the fact that Verstappen did start from the pit lane. He did finish third. And actually, McLaren didn't look any better than that Red Bull. So while it could have been a lot worse for Norris, because he was so on form, he managed to win the race from pole, which he didn't manage to do last year. But for him, he's thinking, well, actually, hang on, we weren't the better car. We just got a bit lucky because Verstappen started so far back.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. That's exactly the point. He came out and said Max was the quickest car. It was, and they need to find out why they weren't. I think we know the reason, don't we? Red Bull's still developing and they're not, but that's all just lip service at that moment in time. It's trying to, again, probably in a way, trying to take the pressure off and the focus off him, but can't do that when you're amassing points and you're winning races. The focus is going to be on Norris now until this championship's done.
And it's not long to go, actually. And Norris can knock Verstappen out of the championship fairly quickly. If Norris wins in the next race in Vegas and then wins the Qatar sprint, Verstappen is out of the running, and it is just between that McLaren pair. Although you would say at this point it would be up to Norris then. Let's talk a bit about Piastri, because I'm I'm finding it quite difficult to watch him drive now. And I don't mean
Yeah.
this in the sense of I don't like his driving style. I'm feeling uncomfortable because clearly the pressure has got to him. He's been making mistake after mistake in the last 5 races. We saw the 3 he made in Baku. He had another one in Austin where he caused that crash on the first lap. We saw another one yesterday in Brazil where he caused another crash. Although um, it basically wiped out. He went into Antonelli, was trying to do an overtake, wiped out Leclerc and ruined Leclerc's race. And the Ferrari driver actually said afterwards, I think it was unfair that Piastri got the 10-second penalty because I don't think he was wholly to blame, saying that actually Antonelli knew that Piastri was there and didn't give him enough room. But you could argue that Piastri, the gap wasn't there. He shouldn't have been going for it. It gave him a massive headache and ended up finishing 5th. He's just lost all momentum. He hasn't been on the
Mm.
podium for the last 4 races. And the reason I say it's uncomfortable now is because it does feel like he's crumbling under the pressure, and I don't enjoy watching that, and I really, really feel for him.
Feel for him, yes. I think, but the upshot is that he will learn from all of these experiences, and I think that it's all good in the long run. It might be painful now. I saw a story that an Australian burger chain had stopped doing a special offer. Did you see this? They were
Oh, this is
offering
my favourite story of the weekend.
Burger Me was a headline I suggested, but
Yeah.
my colleagues hadn't gone for that. But yeah, and the fact that he's not scoring podiums meant that they were able to rethink their special promotion that offered free burgers every time he finished on the podium. So that yes, it's fun, but yes, it shows that we're all watching. And people in Australia are watching, and they're feeling perhaps a little let down that his championship fight has sort of fizzled out a little bit. But as I say, I think that we need to remain positive about the future and his future in Formula One and what he will learn from this experience. I don't think he's going to win the titles now this year, like you say. Momentum's all in Norris's direction, and I think that it is still Norris and Verstappen in this championship, which sounds silly considering that Piastri's still there and had such a great start. But as we know, form is important in sport, and he is out of form. He needs
Yeah,
to
that
reset and just
yeah.
try and get his mind back in the game.
That burger promo is hilarious because after the Italian Grand Prix, they said every time Piastri is on the podium, you'll get a free Oscar Piastri burger, which is a Wagyu burger. And he hasn't been on the podium since Italy. So they've changed the promo so that you get a free burger every time he races on the Monday
Mm.
after he has raced. So if you're in Australia and you're listening, go to whatever the burger chain is called. And also, we have quite a few Australian listeners. Please can you let us know if it's any good?
Yeah,
I want
I
to
think it's
know.
I think it's grilled. I think grilled is the
A
chain.
grilled burger, yeah, it's a Wagyu burger. I mean, it sounds absolutely delicious. I was looking at it earlier. Mark Webber, who is Oscar Piastri's manager, was on
Mm.
Channel 4 this weekend, a UK channel, which does the highlights here. And he was saying, obviously talking about Piastri and what's happening and reflecting on his run of form, which has not been very good. And he said, of course, it's a journey for him. Obviously, it's been an incredible journey so early in his career to be fighting for a world title. He said, naturally, with it being so early, you have to understand boundaries of how that can look for him without putting too much pressure on the situation. And then he carries on, he says, I was an old dog when I went for my championship. He's still early in his career. There are different nuances there. It's a bit of everything, an arm around him, encouragement here and there, opportunity. You can see his peckers up. He's working hard and it's early in his career. Also, if any Australians are listening, can you tell me what you can see his peckers up actually means? Thanks.
It's the head
Um,
or his nose.
it's
His nose, isn't it?
is it his
Back his
nose?
head up. Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
that's a very Australian saying. Um, and I mean, it didn't really tell us anything other than obviously Piastri someone needs to like give him a big cuddle, not just an arm around his shoulder. It feels like,
Mm.
but yeah, those comments from Webber, I felt a little bit like they were conceding of the title
Yeah.
to Norris, as in, okay, it's early, it doesn't matter now. He's got the experience, he's fought for it. He's early on in his career, he'll have another chance. I don't know, it felt like he was done and dusted with it almost.
It does sound a bit like that air of resignation, and lots of cliches in it as well. But that's Mark. Um,
That is Mark,
Look,
yeah.
I think that he would be first to put his arm around him and say, "Look, don't worry about it. Keep your head down and try and stay focused." And I've no doubt that he will bounce back from it. It's disappointing for all of us. I think we wanted to see this battle play out. Conversely, it's very good for McLaren the way that it's happened, because obviously it's prevented that inter-team battle to this point anyway, and creating a bit of a headache to manage. It's kind of doing the job for itself. So I think, as I said before, Piastri's learning. He'll bounce back. We know he's resilient. He's still young, but he is resilient. And
Yeah.
Mark's been there and done it. He knows that what it takes to win races, but also to experience the frustration of not being able to capitalise and win a Formula One title. So he will be advising Piastri on what to do in order
Yeah.
to make sure he wins that title.
He absolutely will. Not bad for number 2 driver was Mark Webber's famous quote. He was quite clearly the number 2 driver at Red Bull when they were favouring Sebastian Vettel, who went on to win 4 titles. Zach Brown, I can absolutely guarantee, probably still has an ulcer though, even if he's popping less paracetamol right now, courtesy of the drivers not giving him such a headache. I want to talk about Verstappen though, because
Yeah.
I do agree with you, Ben, in the sense that this championship fight feels a little bit like it is more between Norris and Verstappen, which sounds ridiculous because there's a 49-point gap between
Yeah.
them. Although, for me, I would never write Verstappen off. I think he is just utterly brilliant. But the reason I was saying at the start for Norris that it was such an important weekend was because Verstappen was he himself as a driver was pretty close to flawless. The car was a nightmare. But for Norris to be able to beat Verstappen on a weekend like that, I think was a really important statement. So just to recap Verstappen's weekend, he finished the sprint 4th and he spent
Yeah.
the entire Saturday complaining about a lack of grip. It then got worse as he had his first Q1 exit, barring, crashes, yellow flags or whatever, but just on his own pace. First Q1 exit, which meant the car was a mess. They decided to abandon the flaw that they had introduced at the previous race in Mexico. They went back to an old spec. They changed the engine, and that meant they had breached Parc Fermé and all the rules. And so they started from the pit lane. Verstappen then got a puncture on the 6th lap, so that forced him to pit early. And he still made his way up to 3rd. He was absolutely brilliant, even if the Red Bull was totally rubbish.
Yeah, we've seen it before, haven't we? Last year he did something similar. That's where the 17th was. 17th to 1st. He's got this ability just to grind out results, and especially in Sao Paulo, it's a track that he performs incredibly well at. But yeah, I mean, I think mentally it was really interesting from Verstappen. Yes, there was frustration, but and we saw his dad hugely frustrated, didn't we, in the pits? But at no point it seems that it interfered with the team dynamic. And it was very much okay, fine. Sorry, we got it wrong. Let's get it right, and moving heaven and earth to rectify the problem, and obviously to bounce back. He has that ability just to make the most of each weekend. And I think we've said before about consistency, and that's ultimately what wins you world championships, the consistency each weekend. And some drivers have it and some drivers don't. And, he does. Like, I'm trying to remember a time when, you know, he hasn't got the most out of the machinery that he's been given. And, it's impressive, but not just for him, but Red Bull as well. And to be committed like that. I think there's a number of things that go on with the decision-making process. A lot of the teams like to be led by the data and the information that they're being given from the factory and the engineers who are running the simulations. But I think more recently we've seen Verstappen question that data and go with gut, and him saying, no, I want to go for this particular setup. In this instance, I think he was proven wrong. And also the team were man enough to and accommodating enough to revert the setup to what they thought was best. So, it's finding its way out. It's finding that relationship process with Laurent Mekies, and fair play to him for having the balls to swap it all around.
Well, when we talk about this, I think we should be clear that we're talking about one side of the garage,
Well,
which is
yeah, it's
Verstappen's
funny,
side,
isn't it?
because it was another. I mean,
Yeah,
for me, I sometimes forget Verstappen has a teammate, but he
yeah,
does, and he's called Yuki Tsunoda, and he finished last. He finished
Yeah.
17th because 3 other drivers failed to finish, DNFs. So he was 17th and last. That is not okay.
No, no. And talking about pressure, I mean, he's clearly someone that's under pressure and
But
isn't
is he?
performing.
Because he's gone, isn't he? I mean, he's basically gone. And so for
Well,
me, I feel like he's performing even worse because he knows he's gone and Isaac Hadjar has that seat from
um,
next season.
probably that's where he's at in his mind. I don't think he's not officially gone.
No, not
But yeah,
officially, yeah.
that's obviously what's going on in his mind, and that's probably why they've just sort of almost forgot about him, haven't they? I mean, it does feel that way, which is such a shame. Um, I'm not sure what's next for Yuki Tsunoda. They're still delaying their decision on naming what they're going to be doing next year. Good weekend for Hadjar, wasn't it?
Oh,
Certainly,
beaten
certainly.
by Lawson, wasn't he?
Yeah, I know, but in terms of solid weekend,
Yeah, it was a solid weekend. I mean,
but
he's having solid weekends.
yeah, exactly. No, I think that's what I mean. I mean, Lawson's sort of come back of late, hasn't he? But
He
I think
has,
that
yeah.
I think that experiment has already passed, as
Yeah,
brutal as it sounds. I think
agreed.
that they very much see that Hadjar's the next best thing to Verstappen. I mean, there's no going to be. He's got to. They're not going to replace Max, are they? So
No, why would you when he's
yeah,
almost single-handedly propping up your constructors' championship? Let's move on to Ferrari and
yeah,
talking of the constructors' championship. I think that's a good place to start because Ferrari went into the weekend second in the standings and have come out of it fourth. And it is now
yeah,
Mercedes who are second in the championship. They are 32 points ahead of Red Bull, who points mostly consist of Max Verstappen. And Red Bull are just 4 points ahead of Ferrari. So, in terms of a disastrous weekend for Ferrari, not just track performance, but potentially tens of millions in prize money.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a blow, isn't it? And I think for me, Hamilton's comments, especially, saying it's been a nightmare season for him. That's not what anyone, wanted to hear. No one had probably expected, with all that fanfare at the start of the year, with him going to Ferrari. And we went into this weekend with me saying that I was optimistic because the team seemed to be making progress. Now I know there was a bit of a first lap collision, etc., but ultimately the car wasn't quick enough, and that should be the biggest concern. The fact is that progress, or not so much progress, but can't put my finger on why one week's good, one week's bad. And I think we saw that with Mercedes with all the porpoising a few years ago. And it can put the team into a bit of a tailspin as they chase defined reasoning. Um, and then they go back to old setups and just looking for any glimmer of hope that means that they're able to iron out the problems. But they just seem absolutely clueless at the moment. And
Yeah.
that should be a huge concern going into next season with the big regulation change.
Well, they had a good weekend in Austin, didn't they? And you weren't
They did.
completely convinced
Yeah.
that it was the lightning rod that would kickstart their season. Just to recap quickly what happened in case you didn't watch it. Both drivers failed to finish the race. Charles Leclerc was out pretty early on. He got caught up in that Piastri-Antonelli collision and was taken out. So absolutely not his fault. But Lewis Hamilton qualified 13th. He had a terrible start. He then
Mm.
caused a collision with Franco Colapinto, which gave him a 5-second penalty. Thankfully, he did actually serve his penalty during the race, so there'll be no hangover into Vegas. But then he did retire because he had floor damage. He
Yeah.
still has not had a podium, and I am not talking about China sprint race. I'm taking it out. I'm talking about proper qualifying and the Sunday race. He still hasn't had a podium for Ferrari at all this year. And you mentioned the quote, Ben, and I'm going to read it because it's pretty brutal. He said, "This is a nightmare, and I've been living it for a while. The flip between the dream of driving for this amazing team and then the nightmare of results that we've had, the ups and downs. It's challenging. This weekend has been disastrous and disappointing for everyone. I am trying to keep my head above water and remain positive." I mean, that doesn't sound like he's got his head up, does it?
No, it doesn't. His pecker's not up, Beck. That's the problem.
Oh no, that is what's
It-
wrong.
um, I will also say that Ollie Behrman, finishing sixth, we spoke about
Yes.
him as a Ferrari young junior. An absolutely outstanding performance from him. And again, another good weekend. Like great result. Really, Ferrari maybe even be looking sooner than 27. Who knows? But
Do you
yeah,
think?
who knows? I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to ignore him, isn't it, when he's delivering solid performances week in, week out? We talk about consistency, and the other two aren't able to do that. So
But I think in Hamilton's favour is that Leclerc is not performing well either. And so actually
also
for me,
true.
I think you have to look at Fred Vasseur, the team principal at Ferrari. And I know he had a contract extension done in July, but I also know that contracts mean absolutely nothing in this sport. You can absolutely guarantee that they will be surveying their options. Let's say John Elkin, the chairman at Ferrari, doesn't want to be losing. It's been a terrible season for Ferrari. The big regs, as you say, Ben, are coming in next season. He doesn't want to get off to a bad start. And we know, don't we? It wasn't even that long ago that we had the big reg change in 2014 and Mercedes went on and they dominated for so long, 8 Constructors' Championships consecutively.
Yeah.
And no team wants to get left behind. It took Red Bull absolutely ages to knock their dominance down. And if Ferrari start on the wrong foot next year, it could even prolong their pain that they're suffering. So
Mm.
I think for me, Vasseur is under the most pressure at the moment in that team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned quotes. Lewis's were bombastic, but also Leclerc. The
Mm.
car was very, very slow. Um, it didn't feel that bad, but we are slow. And when a Formula One driver turns around that and says that, your car's not good enough at this stage of the season, then that should spark alarm bells.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? And obviously, we know that Christian Horner is stalking in the background, wanting a return to Formula One. Um, don't think he's a great fit at Ferrari personally. I also can't see him being Lewis Hamilton's boss, although, like you say, Ben, maybe he won't be there much longer and Behrman will be in.
Yeah.
But I do feel like Fred Vasseur has to kind of, the buck stops with him, right? As it always does, it stops with the boss.
Well, what about Andrea Stella going back there?
I
That would
mean,
make sense,
that
wouldn't
would
it?
be a hell of a coup, wouldn't it?
Well,
That would be amazing. I mean, he is a lifelong Ferrari person. I mean, he's Italian, right? So he started his
yeah,
entire career. He was at
yeah,
Ferrari when Schumacher was there, all of those glory days. He is almost single-handedly being credited with what is happening at McLaren, although I do actually think Zak Brown deserves a lot of the credit too. He is a phenomenally brilliant guy. He is amazing to talk to. He can make the most complicated things seem really straightforward. He's
yeah.
great for culture. He's tried so hard this season to keep it fair between the drivers. And even though there have been lots of memes and it's been difficult, I think that was the right approach. If Ferrari could tempt him back, crikey, that would be absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you are right, Ben. I'm sure they are probably wondering how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he would be top of my wish list. I wouldn't look outside. I think it's very important with Ferrari, and I know we had Jean Todt, a Frenchman, and we've got a current Frenchman, but I do think that the identity of the Ferrari team principal needs to be an Italian. I just think that, unfortunately, that's just how that team's wired to understand the culture and ethos, the politics, the press, dealing with so many factors. I think that it would be a good fit. I know he's settled in the UK. I think his family are in the UK, but of course, the lure of going back to Ferrari and heading up that would certainly be appealing to anyone. So, yeah, he would be top of my wish list.
Ferrari agree with you as well. Ferrari do like to keep it Italian, don't they? They very
Yeah.
much do. And also, I think for me, Fred Vasseur started learning Italian when he first went over to Italy into Maranello, and then he found that he was too busy and he stopped doing the Italian classes. He still doesn't
Um,
speak Italian, coming to the end of his second season. And for me, we've both been to Maranello a few times. It's incredibly Italian. 98% of the workforce probably are Italian. And so
yeah,
to not be able to speak the language, I think for me, does hurt culture. I can't see how it doesn't. And that's not reflective on Vasseur's management style or as a person. I just think
yeah,
it's, a natural language barrier does make things difficult. Is he walking around the factory with a translator? Language is so important. The nuances, telling jokes. And I remember when Vettel came over to Red Bull and his grasp of English is obviously absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But he was also learning a lot of English from watching, like telling the jokes, and he really likes the British humour, and that was helping his English as
He
well.
was
And
watching
he's a fan of
like
Only Fools and
Paul
Horses and Little
yeah,
Britain, and
yeah.
so I do think that's important because Vettel was like one of the things Vettel was saying was that he then jokes with his engineers and because they all have the same, basically the same sense of humor. And that's really important because they then formed this team. They went on to have great success because they all love working together. You know, the best
Mhm.
businesses all have great work environments. And for Sir, he's kind of on the outside, you know, are they going for a glass of wine after work and he can't really join in? And, you know, I don't know if the boss actually does that or if he actually ever gets any time off, but do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
they're completely different. You know, just because you speak French doesn't mean you can speak Italian. You know, so if you speak Spanish and Italian, sometimes they're like, well, you can sort of like you can't get the
Yeah.
jokes, obviously, but every now and again you understand what's being said. But I think for me, to have an Italian back at the helm of Ferrari would be massive. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Stella would be phenomenal.
Yeah, it'd be a big boost, wouldn't it? Shot in the arm at the time that they need, and yeah, if they're serious about the rebuilding process, then that's where they've got to look top at the top first, haven't they? And then put the structure in below. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, I definitely do not disagree with you. Let's move on to Mercedes. I mentioned them very briefly, but we shouldn't. They are now second in the championship. It was a
Mm.
great weekend, finally, for Kimi Antonelli, who finished second in the sprint race and the race on Sunday. George Russell finished fourth in Sunday's race. They have been slowly kind of creeping along in the background, haven't they? Being
Yeah,
quite successful at what they're doing. I think they probably will wrap up second. They've got two strong drivers. I'm not saying Ferrari don't, but they're obviously the car's a mess. Whereas I think Mercedes have been fairly consistent actually and doing a pretty good job.
yeah, and this is what I was talking about in terms of building over the season. And excuse me, whereas Ferrari have been their form's been patchy. I think that Mercedes have always tend to finish the seasons quite strongly, even when they had terrible starts to the year. There was always a victory at the tail end that would give them some sort of optimism, going into the new campaign. And you can't underestimate the importance of that win in terms of boost of morale for the team after a long, hard season. And I think it's really important. I think that's the key, getting that win in these last three races. For if Mercedes do it, great. Like it's another positive shot in the arm, and we know they go well in cold circuits. So Vegas would be the only option for that victory. Russell did well last year. So yeah, look, it's great to see them bouncing back, but it's consistency. I'm going back to it again. I'm like a broken record, and they're beginning to get it, whereas Ferrari aren't. They're just a guessing game each weekend.
Yeah, it is. And quick on any other business, Franco Colapinto has been confirmed with Alpine for next season.
Yeah,
Doohan just
strange.
completely overlooked. Paul Aron was
Mm,
obviously in the running as well.
yeah,
Flavio Briatore, who's, I don't even know what his job title is anymore, but basically running the team.
yeah,
He hadn't been very complimentary about Colapinto. We don't know how long the contract's for. They've just said it's for 2026. Gasly, who is the other driver there, he's through to 2028. So maybe it is just a 1 year deal. But
yeah.
yeah, Colapinto being given the seat, Jack Doohan is just done for, basically.
Yeah, I'm in Buenos Aires now, and there is so much Colapinto advertising everywhere. He's all over the TV. Was at Boca Juniors Stadium the other day, and there's pictures of Maradona everywhere, and then Colapinto's picture is in the middle of all of them. And it's like, he's really being portrayed as this hero. And I saw a video of him celebrating with Argentine fans, or Argentine fans in Sao Paulo after his 15th place finish. I'm more curious as to the timing because he wasn't going anywhere. No one else was going to take him. Yet there's still a few decent candidates knocking around, and I don't understand why they pulled the trigger now. I think that for me is the most curious thing. The form hasn't been there. There's nothing to imply that things are getting that much better. I just don't know why they did it. Why they pulled the trigger so early. Why not wait?
Well, if I was being a cynic, I would say it was geographical proximity.
Yeah, maybe, but
Better the devil, you know? I mean, Paul Aron would have been a rookie. I mean, Williams obviously don't rate Colapinto. They let him go over to Alpine. Jack Doohan, they've clearly decided against, made that decision very early on, having done, 5 races he managed at the start of the season.
Yeah, but there's
So I
there's
guess maybe
candidates.
they'd made the decision and they're just like, well, this is as close as we're going to get to Argentina.
Yeah,
Let's
but
do it.
there's candidates. There's proper candidates like well, not proper. He's proper, but like Lindblad. There's Dunn at McLaren.
Alex
You
Dunn,
know,
yeah.
there's a couple of exciting young prospects who could be on the market. We don't know how the F2 Championship's going to plan out. One of them's got to leave, so
Yeah, I mean, would you just wait for Red Bull to make their decision and see who's left over,
I
right?
think that's it.
Because there
Really,
are
you've
better
kind of got to
options
wait
on
for
the
Red
table.
Bull to
Red
make their
Bull,
decision, and then yeah, everything will fall into place after that.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Alex Dunn would have been a great shout. He's a very exciting prospect, Irish driver currently in Formula 2. Red Bull have about 5 or 6 drivers to choose from and only 4 seats. So, yes, they had many better options than Colapinto. However, I suspect he pays for his own seat, as you say, with merchandise sales and all the Argentinian flags and adverts and things that he brings in. I am a cynic, aren't I?
You
Crikey.
are, yeah,
I know. I know. Lots of people didn't agree with me about Charles Leclerc, by the way, and the timing of his
good.
engagement. Actually, lots of people did, and lots of people didn't. So there you go. I'm here to give my opinion. You can agree with me or not agree with me. So there you go. I had lots of text messages from friends saying, "You're absolutely right." So thanks to my friends. Uh, all right. We have a couple more guest episodes coming up, you lucky lot. We will be recording those in the coming weeks. We'll be excited to tell you all about those and who they are. Keep an eye out on our socials, on Instagram, on Facebook. And yes, until then, but we will be back. Obviously, 3 races to go, 3 race weekends to go, including a sprint race. Vegas, baby. Yeah. A great weekend. Lots of fun. Uh, so much still to talk about. It's going to be a brilliant run in to the end of the season. Until then, if you have liked this podcast, please do rate and review us. Please do get in contact. Tell us if the Oscar Piastri burger is any good. Tell me what having your pecker up means. No pictures, please. And until next time, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.